If you saw my initial review of Destiny 2 a while back, you know that I thought the game was good, but heavily flawed and extremely disappointing. My initial experience of the game was extremely positive, as I got lost in Bungie's new and beautiful world they had created, eager to explore every nook and cranny that I possibly could. Then as time went on and I approached the endgame, my feelings of awe and inspiration quickly turned into shock. How could critics think this game was near perfect, when there was so much wrong with the game and so many areas in which it had regressed? Looking back on Destiny 1, the game was also far from a smooth experience, as the game launched with a horrible story and was extremely barren on content in its vanilla state. This time around, Bungie did address both the story issue and the content drought that the original had suffered. The vanilla experience of Destiny 2 is better than the vanilla experience of Destiny 1. But that's the issue. It's only better than the vanilla Destiny 1. Because after Destiny 1 had completed its full run-through of DLCs and expansions, it became one of the best possible $60 experiences that money could buy. After the last DLC, The Rise of Iron, Destiny had finally reached the goal of making a game that was fun to play with friends, had meaningful and exciting loot, tons of missions and PvE activities, and now had very addicting PvP multiplayer. We all expected Destiny 2 to launch at the same standards Destiny 1 had ended on, and rightfully so. But then that's where the problem came to be. Destiny 2 is not the game we all wanted and expected. Bungie attempted to make Destiny 2 more accessible to a much broader range of consumers by making the game more simple and more dumbed down on pretty much every level. The problem is that by making the game more open to everyone, they kept no one. I understand that for publishers and developers alike, attracting mass hordes of casuals and new players at the game's launch is very appealing for both commercial and development reasons. But you need to make sure that when attracting a new audience, you don't alienate and push away the old audience that stuck with you through the years. If you spend 3 years building a sizable and loyal audience that will stick with the game in the long run, is it really worth it to have a massive audience for only a week or two that leaves for good afterwards and has no interest in buying DLC? For me, no. In Destiny 2, you can acquire the best loot and the max light level by playing solo. But in Destiny 1, it was a game designed to be played with friends and clanmates. If you wanted to max out your character's light level, get the coolest looking armor in the game, and snag the game's best weapons, you'd have to play the game's various strikes and raids that were very complex and all contained very tough challenges. But at least they accomplished one of the most important features in any game. The loot was rewarding. The right combination of grind, fun, and challenge created an incredible endgame that launched Destiny 1's social status into stardom and created a strong and loyal community. A community of players that were always grinding and hoping for the best rewards, while also helping newer players run through their first attempts at strikes and raids. Yet here in Destiny 2, there is no viable incentive to play the toughest challenges, or the prestige version of the raid, as you can acquire the exact same gear in the standard version, as well as get better weapons for completing simpler challenges. All you really need for the best gear and loot is to complete the weekly milestones. To make matters worse as well, even if you did have your heart set on a specific raid weapon, you still didn't need to set foot in the raid itself to get it, thanks to the clan reward system that Bungie implemented in Destiny 2. As long as someone in your clan completes the raid each week, you get a loot drop of raid-specific gear, meaning you get the rewards without the challenge. In Destiny 1, I'm sure I'm not the only one that ran the Vault of Glass several times to land the Fatebringer and Vex Mytho class. And even when I had them all, I continued to run it in an effort to help others nab theirs. This new ease of acquiring powerful and exotic loot though, still isn't my biggest problem with the game. My biggest issue, and I know many others feel the same as well, is with the game's lack of weapon rolls. I know now in Destiny 2, they're going to have something similar to this with a new class of weapons that can get random rolls, but I still don't think Bungie realizes how big of a deal it was when they gutted this feature. In Destiny 1, players played the game for a long time, not just for a certain weapon, but for the perfect version of a weapon that fit their own unique playstyle. This turned into something people would call god rolls for certain weapons, which meant getting the best possible perk combination for a certain gun. In Destiny 2 though, a gun is a gun, so basically once you have all the guns you want, you are set. There's nothing else to grind for, or nothing else that's worth playing strikes and raids over and over for. While yes, this might reduce the grind a bit, it also reduces the feeling of self-accomplishment and pride. In Destiny, landing a weapon or armor was just the beginning. You then had to farm materials in order to upgrade it and unlock those perks. In Destiny 2, everything's unlocked as soon as the item drops. Then there's a new form of weapon balancing, in which both the primary and secondary weapon slots are made the same, just as the secondary options boasting elemental damage. This might not seem like a massive change, but where it affects the game so negatively is that it lumps shotguns and sniper rifles into the same category as rocket launchers and swords, meaning that the former two are hardly ever used. I've seen people say that the decision to change the way the weapons are segmented has resulted in a more balanced PvP experience. But why does one segment have to affect the other? Why not have different loadout options for PvP and PvE? Would it really be that hard to have separate loadouts? Now what I'm about to say I'm sure will be pretty controversial, but hear me out. I do believe many of these changes have made PvP more balanced, but to me it also took away all the fun that existed in Destiny 1's PvP. Especially the fact that every single match type is 4v4, and that you can't choose which type of game you'd like to play. Bungie might argue that it forces players to try new modes rather than sticking with the ones they like, but that has never stopped me from trying out all the modes in Battlefield 4, Halo 5, and Rainbow Six Siege. But my personal biggest letdown for PvP is Iron Banner. It was once seen as the pinnacle of Destiny's Crucible combat. It's partly disappointing because of the limited 4v4 dynamic, but the biggest issue is that there's no real incentive to play it. You're not going to get any gear that's really worth having, so what's the point of putting in all that time for nothing to show other than a crapload of tokens? To be fair, Bungie's been trying to take steps to address some of these issues, but I feel like they don't really have a choice, given the unprecedented community backlash Bungie has received over the past couple of months, and rightfully so, with horrible DLC, a non-existent endgame, sneaky corporate changes to loot and XP, tons of PvP glitches, and poor and lazy attempts at transparency with us the consumers. So to wrap it all up, the main reason I'm quitting Destiny 2 for good, unless a miracle happens, is because how can Bungie expect me to play and enjoy Destiny when they themselves seem to not know what its identity is? Bungie set out to create a hybrid FPS MMO, but wasn't completely committed to either. Destiny was often criticized for a lack of new endgame content, as well as not having a good enough single-player campaign, with a couple expansions and 3 years of adding content and smoothing out the rough patches. Bungie still failed on its original hope of an FPS MMO hybrid, but what they did is they created a fun console multiplayer game that was worth buying and experiencing. With Destiny 2, Bungie should have just made this game into another expansion onto the current Destiny experience, or at least made a true sequel that felt like Destiny. Unlike the most successful MMOs, Destiny and Destiny 2 do not require subscriptions in order to play. Instead, they rely on initial purchase price, and the cost of regular DLC updates. I wish there was a cheaper method in an ideal world, but in the real world, I understand the developers, publishers, and shareholders need a return on the investment, which means it's in Bungie's and Activision's best interest to attract as many initial buyers as possible by making the game as accessible to the max amount of consumers. Unfortunately, a lot of the players picked up by making the game more accessible aren't the ones that continue to play once the campaign is done, and they're certainly not going to play 3 more times to level up each character class, or go online to develop relationships and build teams to tackle the toughest parts of the game. Bungie and Activision need to decide now, is Destiny 2 and the rest of the franchise going forward going to be aimed at the committed community that made the original game what it was, or is it a dumbed down, story-driven FPS designed to attract casual gamers that will move on to the next big game when it launches? I know for me, if it's the latter, then you can count me out on the franchise. But if it's the former, then I will give Bungie another shot when Destiny 3 comes around. But until then, I have no interest in giving Activision and Bungie any more money. As of Destiny 2, they have lost both my trust and my respect. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Will you give Bungie another chance, or are you done with the franchise? And if you like this video and you want to see more like it, be sure to leave a like and hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you guys on the next Shepard Gaming video. Keyless Ally.